This is Radio Health Journal. I'm Reed Pence. This week, facial recognition, the final straw that means social media companies know virtually everything about you.
I think we should all start working under an assumption that our privacy is gone.
Why pictures are worth more than 1,000 words when Radio Health Journal returns.
I'm Nancy Benson, host of Radio Health Journal. If you enjoy listening to Radio Health Journal, you'll also like our sister show, Viewpoints, which covers a wide array of topics from education to history to the environment. Here's a preview of what they're covering this week on Viewpoints.
Teaching is really a calling. Nobody ever said, I'm going to be a teacher and make a whole lot of money.
The mental toll of teaching. Then,
so often, people who need money the most are the ones that do the least desirable jobs, and they're the least desirable jobs because they're the dirtiest and most dangerous work.
The toll of being poor in the United States. I'm Marty Peterson.
and I'm Gary Price. These stories in depth this week on your public affairs magazine, Viewpoint.
Listen to Viewpoints on your favorite radio station and subscribe and listen to shows anytime on Apple Podcasts and Google Play.
If you've ever had the feeling you're being watched, you're right. Everywhere we go, cameras are watching us. But it's not just safety surveillance anymore. We're being identified and tracked. If you walk into a grocery store, the camera may know exactly who you are instantly. It can match your face with a database culled from your previous trips there and even pictures you've uploaded to social media. Facial recognition algorithms are a part of life for both good and evil.
Well, we are surrounded by facial recognition technology, and the uses of facial recognition technology range from very positive and life-improving ones, such as being able to unlock your phone by simply taking it in your hand and phone recognizing your face is just arguably making our lives easier and more convenient, to some very questionable practices.
That's Dr. Mikkel Kosinski, Associate Professor of Organizational Behavior at the Stanford University Graduate School of Business and a world-renowned data scientist. He says from just one look at you, the camera can identify and categorize you for law enforcement, national security, marketers, and more.
Crossing the borders these days involves facial recognition technology, recognizing our face and comparing it with the database of people who can and cannot cross the border or should be investigated by the border crossing agents. CCTV cameras, widely used in public spaces, commercial spaces, office buildings, are constantly tracking our movements, recognizing faces, and then either tracking us across space. So let's say if you enter a supermarket, your face is going to be tracked across different cameras, which allows the operator of the supermarket to understand what are your patterns of movements inside the supermarket. But also you're being matched with a database of customers. So the operator can track how often do you come to the supermarket, how much time you're spending there, what you're buying, and so on.
Facial recognition is a powerful tool for law enforcement, so powerful that some jurisdictions have banned police from using it. Kosinski says the threat is that they, or private companies, can recognize us from our pictures on social media to build data on us that we wouldn't give them otherwise.
Or going even one step further and trying to recognize intimate psychological traits of people. And this is because our psychological traits affect whom we are hanging out with and who we are choosing and surrounding ourselves with as friends. It turns out one of the most powerful psychological processes is homophily, or the preference for others that are somewhat like us, meaning that liberal people tend to hang out with other liberal people. So now if you just can find out what are the political views or sexual orientation or religiosity or personality of few people in the database, but then you can start recreating the connections of those people with others in the network, suddenly you can start populating this database of yours with very accurate predictions of who is liberal and who is conservative, who is gay, straight, and so on.
That part is easy, and it's the start of the slippery slope toward the end of our privacy. Kosinski says you can bet you and your friends are being examined with every shot you share on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
You can be quite certain that your photo is being analyzed whenever you upload it to an online database. And this is done routinely and automatically.
But once they're doing that, there's nothing to stop companies from asking a lot more than simply, who is it? For example, they can match pictures you've uploaded with information they've bought from other databases, maybe the groceries you've bought or the books you've read. The result is they can accurately predict details about your religion, politics, intelligence, personality, and much more.
Once you gathered some intel on a person, whether you're a supermarket that tracks its customers and counts how many bottles of wine or baby products you purchased in last month, or whether you're a social network that provides those wonderful free tools that enable us to communicate with each other, well, you want to monetize this data. For most companies, most big tech companies, selling our data is main source of income.
Kosinski says that's not all bad. In return for our data, we get to use social media platforms that connect us with friends and family around the world. But we need to realize that everything we post and more is all for sale.
Even if you think that you're sharing your data just with Facebook or just with another useful app that you installed on your phone, in reality, this data becomes available to anyone who would like to pay a few cents for it. Now, we should remember that the data that Facebook can retrieve from our own Facebook profiles is not the limit for Facebook. First of all, Facebook would go out and purchase additional data about its users from different online exchanges, data exchanges, and data markets. Facebook routinely buys history of purchases for its users. Thus, if you go to a local grocery store and buy some wine, Facebook will know about it. If you just purchased a house or had a baby, even if you don't mention it on Facebook, this data is likely to end in Facebook databases.
However, facial recognition is now getting so smart that it doesn't even need to know who your friends are to predict much more than identity.
One can use such algorithms, and there are studies showing that such algorithms can be used in consensually and with a person's opt-in approval, diagnose potential psychological problems or other health issues. Because it turns out that people who are at risk of having a heart attack or suffering from early stages of depression are behaving slightly differently than people that are not at risk or whose risk of suffering from those afflictions is lower. But the same technology can be used without a person's knowledge for more nefarious purposes, such as predicting whether a given person is likely to buy a given product, or maybe a given person could be convinced not to go and vote, and it could be expedient to a particular political party to try to convince such a person to stay at home in the next election.
In fact, facial recognition can even reveal what could be your deepest secrets and most intimate traits, and it can do it based on just one photo.
It turns out that this technology is being used and can be used to out our intimate traits, to predict our intimate traits with quite accuracy. It turns out that an average gay person is somewhat more similar to other gay people than to straight people. And this is because fashion is somewhat different between different groups of people. People choose to present themselves differently. People adopt slightly different facial expressions, different styles of facial hair or makeup, choose to take pictures from slightly different angle. And it might be, we don't know for sure yet, but it might be that people from different groups have also slightly different facial characteristics.
Kosinski's experiments using off-the-shelf facial recognition software show that from a single photo, algorithms can correctly predict people's political ideology 72% of the time. It can correctly identify sexual orientation in men more than 80% of the time, and in women more than 70% of the time. That's far more accurate than humans can do. That's why a group of computer scientists at the University of Chicago have developed software they call FOX that can cloak pictures from facial recognition technology.
How it does this is by simply just modify your image, introduce some very small perturbations, changes to image, so it doesn't really impact your normal sharing of the image online. But at the same time, those images are not useful for facial recognition model to learn your true face.
Sean Chan, a PhD candidate who's part of the FOX team, says the FOX software is available for people to download now. And when they process their pictures with it before uploading them, the technology introduces noise to the pixels of a photograph that confuse facial recognition. But since we look at pictures in a completely different way, the changes are invisible to the human eye. It's sad that we have to resort to something like this, and Kosinski wonders how practical it really is.
It's hard to imagine that now each one of us will have to become a forensic photo specialist, in which we will have to start applying ever more advanced filters to every single image that we are uploading to the internet. Not to mention that, of course, great majority of our images are taken by someone else, be it a CCTV camera or our friend that takes a picture at the party and then uploads it to the internet.
Chan says his team has thought of that. Usability is a big concern.
Average people don't care about that privacy that much, and they just simply, upload, don't really care. So we believe that user may not be the best entity to perform such protection. So we're thinking, what if there is a privacy caring camera makers, right? So just make the camera so that as soon as you take the picture, automatically protects it. And then without user even knowing anything, because there's no, visible perturbation on it, you just upload to anywhere and it will protect your privacy. And same can be said to true for, say Facebook, or if not Facebook, say Instagram or Twitter can do this in a larger scale for their users before exposing those private pictures on the internet. They can run a program like this. This will hugely reduce kind of the usability burden on the users. And in some sense, these type of industry entity is incentivized using some technique like this, since people care about privacy and more these days.
But would smartphone makers or Facebook or Twitter willingly put such a technology in their products? And if they did, Kosinski says, how can we stay ahead of the game?
When it comes to algorithms, it's a constant arms race. We can develop an algorithm today that will fool the facial recognition algorithms of today. But then guess what? Next iteration, next generation of facial recognition algorithms will just learn how to circumvent those defenses that we developed today. And I think that at the end of the day, we should not be relying essentially on an arms race, on chances of winning such an arms race. We should be relying on smart regulation introduced by well-informed policymakers that protect us, not necessarily from facial recognition technology itself, because once again, facial recognition technology has great advantages.
However, Kosinski says the nefarious uses of facial recognition are so powerful that regulation might have to assume we have no secrets anymore. Our religious and political views, sexual orientation, and other traits that we might prefer to cloak can't reliably be hidden anymore. So Kosinski says we need to be sure those traits are tolerated and protected so that hiding them isn't necessary.
While I still believe that we should have right to privacy, and I still believe that there's a need for good privacy protecting technologies and good privacy protecting policy, I think we should all start working under an assumption that our privacy is gone, that a motivated third party can essentially learn about us virtually anything. And I think that working under this assumption will help us to start developing solutions and technologies that can make sure that this post-privacy world is still habitable and safe.
You can find out more about all of our guests and where to download the Fox cloaking technology through links on our website, radiohealthjournal.org. I'm Reed Pence.
Flu season is here, and flu is similar enough to COVID-19 to create dangerous confusion. SARS-CoV-2 can result in more serious illness, but initial symptoms are often similar: fever and chills, a cough, runny nose, and shortness of breath. COVID-19 seems to spread more easily than flu, and people are often contagious longer. Dr. Manoj Gandhi, Senior Medical Director at Thermo Fisher Scientific, says, unfortunately, you can't tell the difference by symptoms alone.
Simultaneous testing for SARS-CoV-2 and influenza viruses is essential. Multiplex PCR technology allows for testing of multiple viruses and co-infections at the same time, which provides proper diagnosis, reduces transmission of COVID-19, monitors the spread of both COVID-19 and flu, and saves valuable testing resources.
Multi-pathogen PCR testing helps drive swift and accurate treatment decisions to help simultaneously manage flu season and the COVID-19 pandemic. Find out more at thermofisher.com/COVID-flu information. Cataracts are the #1 cause of vision loss in America and a common part of aging. Now, there is an opportunity for people with cataracts to enhance their vision thanks to innovative technologies and cataract replacement lenses. Acrosoft IQ Vivity is a first-of-its-kind lens, delivering high-quality 20/20 distance vision, excellent intermediate, and functional near vision. People who chose Vivity reported improved vision at various distances for activities such as watching their grandchildren play, working on a computer, and reading. 90% of patients with Vivity stated they are satisfied with their results and would get it again. To learn more about Vivity, visit mycataracts.com. Acrosoft IQ Vivity Extended Vision family of IOLs. Important product information. Description. The Acrosoft IQ Vivity Extended Vision IOL is a type of IOL used to focus images clearly onto the back of your eye or retina to allow clear vision after the cataract removal, providing clear distance vision, better intermediate, and some near vision compared to what a monofocal IOL would provide. There is a chance you may still need glasses for distance, intermediate, and/or near vision. Side effects include visual disturbances such as glare, rings around lights, starbursts, and a decrease in ability to distinguish objects from their background, especially in dim lighting. These side effects may make it more difficult to see in some situations. Contrast sensitivity, an important measure of visual function, is the ability to distinguish objects from their background, especially in dim lighting. In the Acrosoft IQ Vivity IOL clinical study, contrast sensitivity in dim lighting was reduced in patients who received the Acrosoft IQ Vivity IOL compared to those who received the monofocal IOL. Attention! As with any surgery, there are risks involved. Prior to surgery, ask your eye doctor to provide you with the patient information brochure for the proposed Acrosoft IQ Vivity Extended Vision IOL to be implanted. This document will further inform you of the risks and benefits associated with this IOL. Discuss any questions about possible risks and benefits with your eye doctor, as well as your medical condition and any eye disease you may have. For more information, visit mycataracts.com.
And that's Viewpoints for this week. Viewpoints is a production of Mediatrax Communications. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram to learn more about upcoming shows and find a library of past programs on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify. Plus, you'll always find previous segments and more information about our guests at viewpointsradio.org. Join us again next week for another edition of Viewpoints.
Coming up next week on Radio Health Journal.
There's so many different causes, them trying to sort of play this game of whack-a-mole to tamp down all of the different fires that are happening. It can feel a bit like they're trying to assemble an airplane in a firefight.
Preventing military suicides, how pressures are greater than ever.
Then the struggle for identity when twins lose their other half.
Often they feel like they're half of themselves. They don't know how to see themselves in life any longer. They don't know who they are.
All that and more on Radio Health Journal.